Well, hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Daphne St. Clair and I'm so excited to be talking to someone about Snacey. All right, if you could introduce yourself to our lovely camera audience over there. Tell us a bit about your role on Snacey and anything else you'd like to share.
Sure, yeah. Hi, I'm Priscila Gonzalez. I'm the writer and director of Snacey, a new musical coming to Toronto Fringe this summer. Yeah, I'm a local Toronto theater artist, and this is my first musical. Gee.
First musical. So it is a new musical, but this was at the Toronto Fringe last year. So is this just luck? I mean, how'd you get in again?
That's tea. It was actually 2 years ago. It was in as a solo show for Kids Fest, so very different. And then this time around, we got our slot because my cohort and we were part of Tent, which is a producing program run by the Toronto Fringe, and we were part of that last year. So that is, you get a slot with that, and that's how we got in this year.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so why the transition from a solo show to the now a musical? What's that been like?
Yeah, well, it's been chaotic and beautiful all at once, but the reason was mainly it started as a 10-minute piece for a university class that I had at York, and that was very different, very bare bones. And then I was like, oh, okay, I have the premise for a TYA kind of show of a birthday party and a snake. And then the director, no, I'm gonna cut that. Sorry. Yeah, at the time it just felt right to keep it as a solo show. And then it just didn't feel right. I felt like the story and the characters deserved a bigger world and a lot more camp. And music just kind of felt right to add. And it added a lot more to the world and to the characters for sure. Yeah.
So do you believe all musicals are camp?
Ooh. That's a good question. You know what? I'd say yes. But some are more campy than others. Yes, but I do think music adds some sort of level of camp, of extraness to a regular story, you know?
Right. And why does Snacey need that extra level of camp, maybe?
Ooh, because of how chaotic the story is. There's many ups and downs. There's big emotions. There's some violence, perhaps, some very chaotic things, and I think that just the world and the character need all of these things to kind of keep up with what's going on and the themes that we're dealing with, if that makes sense.
Totally. And now speaking of building up, you've got 7 designers on this show, is that correct? So why so many? I mean, for a Fringe show, that's quite a few designers. So talk to me a little bit about what their role has been in creating this campy, crazy world of Snacey.
That's a really good question. Yeah, I don't know. I think we just started with the idea of like a designer for each department. So there was costumes, props, puppets. But there are many puppets in the show, and for many different reasons. So that became 2 designers just for the puppets. And honestly, each designer has brought in a beautiful element to the show. Like, they've added so many layers to everything. It's just made the show 10 times better, because they each come in with their own perspective, but they're all so cohesive in their own way. So yeah, it just kind of happened where a lot of people were interested in being part of the show, thankfully, which was amazing to see. And so why not? The more the merrier, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about the puppetry. You said there's puppetry for many different reasons. So talk to me about those reasons.
Well, yeah. So there's shadow puppetry. There's a character that's a puppet the whole time. And then there's other puppets that are in place of other characters. So yeah, we play with it a lot. So there is violence, as I've said before, but you know, like I didn't want sort of the violence or these sort of heavier themes to bring things down. If anything, I kind of wanted it to add to the story and kind of keep it palatable. And I felt that the puppets did that, where it's like we can still have this lively show, this campy fun show, while talking about these heavier themes. And so the puppets bring that while still keeping the truth to everything. But yeah, it's been very interesting to be able to see the different offers our two puppet designers have, because they have very different styles and we have very different puppets, which has been very, just brought many different layers again to everything.
Very cool. And I'd like to touch on something you said there. Why do you think we need to make truth palatable?
I don't think we need to make truth palatable, but I do think that for this specific show and how it started, it started as TYA. And so there were these bigger themes like mother-daughter relationships, intergenerational trauma, anger issues, identity, these very heavy topics that I kind of wanted to explore for a younger audience.
Right.
And so how do I do that in a way that is not sort of undermining their capability of understanding, but also not going overboard with exploring those topics? And so that is where it started. And then it became this show where I felt that it was just a show that I want it to be for everyone. That's why we call it a family show now. But that is what I meant in terms of like the truth or the themes in this show, and keeping those palatable in a way that is friendly for everyone who's going to go watch it.
Very cool. And do you think music does help that along as well, in addition to the puppets? Or are there any other elements that you see making it more palatable for everyone?
Yeah, I think the music definitely adds something. It's kind of like in any musical, it's like when you have so much to say or the feeling is so big, you have to sing it. I think this show does that very well. I hope that's what we're trying to do, is that, that in the circumstances where words aren't enough, then we have the songs and we have the music now to really push for what these characters are saying. So I think the music is definitely something, and the puppets for sure, and and the fact that they're animals too, and you can also relate to those. As humans, each of these animals have different issues of their own, being prey or a predator, what that means. But I think that also adds something that we can kind of relate to in different ways because of their little themes,
Very cool.
Yeah.
And speaking of this show being for everyone, I mean, in your mandate, you say accessibility is not just a bonus, it's a part of our core values. I'd love to hear about your accessibility performances. You've got relaxed performances, masked performances, caption performances, ASL interpretive performances. You're at a fully accessible venue. You've got all gender and accessible washrooms. I mean, how do you program something like this for everyone?
Well, last year when we were in the tent program, that was something that my collective and I, Pigeon Productions and we talked about, right? Was the lack of accessible measures in Toronto theater, or at least that became a conversation. And one of the things we noticed was, more importantly, the lack of ASL interpreted performances. So even before we knew we were going to do Snacey, we knew we wanted to have an ASL interpreted performance for our Fringe run. So we went into this process knowing that we were going to fight for that and really work hard to make that happen. And it is not easy. It's been a year-long process, and we had to start the fundraising very early on. I've learned so much, and again, I am aware of my privilege in this, and the fact that I'm dealing with it for the first time, which already, if it's this difficult for the first time, I can only imagine when it's every time. But then we really fought for that to happen. And relaxed performances and mass performances are accessibility measures that are very doable, are very affordable, and everyone can make happen. So those we knew we were going to do for sure. And then the ASL interpreter performance, again, that was a team effort. We luckily had the amazing Natasha, aka Courage Bacchus, a part of our team, who is our deaf theater consultant. And we learned a lot through them, and that's where we started to connect with other people to make this happen. But it takes a lot of work.
Absolutely. And talk me through maybe some things you've learned from Courage about, I mean, how do you program a show, a musical that's ASL interpretive? What does that look like?
Yes. Wow. I'm thinking through all the steps, going through the past year. First, it definitely takes a lot of planning early on, not just in terms of starting the fundraising early enough to be able to have the funds to then be able to bring on 2 deaf theater interpreters and 2 hearing interpreters, but also, you know, the production meetings that come beforehand. Yeah, but hold on. Hold on. Da-da-da-da. Sorry, what was the question again?
I mean,
I got so lost thinking about last year.
how do you create a musical for, I would say, a deaf audience? What is that process like?
Right, yes. So starting it early on, and then, we began to, there's very few deaf theater interpreters that do theater. So then, in a way, it was easy in the sense that there were only so many people we could reach out to, but luckily they were all very passionate about the story and eager to come on. And so from one person, then it's starting to ask, okay, who else can I ask? So it started kind of like this chain of events. But in terms of how to make it accessible, well, that's something that we're still in the process of learning, and we hope that we do it justice. We're doing our best, and so we wanted it to do it as well as we can. So we have the 2 deaf theater interpreters and then 2 hearing interpreters, and those are going to be in the audience, and then the deaf theater interpreters are on stage. So it's like the hearing interpreters are interpreting what the actors are saying. They interpret that to the deaf theater interpreters that will interpret it to the deaf audience in ASL So it is a huge thing. I think for the songs, especially because our songs are quite fast, it is a mix of giving them the material ahead of time for them to rehearse, while also it's also how we started the conversation of captions as well. Being able to keep up with the lyrics. So I think we're still learning, and it is not easy, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. I mean, there you have it, folks. I mean, and speaking of it, you're talking a lot about fundraising for these, obviously, access needs. Where's your money going?
Yes, our money is going not just to be able to pay our amazing interpreting team, our accessibility coordinator, but also our artists. And as you said it yourself, we have 7 designers, we have 6 performers, we have a very big team. And so we've started fundraising to be able to pay our artists as fairly as possible on a Fringe show, while also being able to pay off these measures. Interpreting, it is a lot of work, and thusly, it is a lot to be able to afford. That's where it's going. It's going to our captioning designer, who's doing a lot of work in making these captions and these slide decks. All the materials that went into the set, into the puppets, into the costumes. Keeps going.
The list goes on. I mean, it is a lot of work, hey? And I'm curious too, there's no pay what you can performance. And so how do you prioritize maybe what access needs are valuable to a show like this over others? Not to say that one is better than the other, but how did you go about prioritizing those?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, obviously, some sacrifices had to be made in the sense of we couldn't do it all. We couldn't also pay what you can, just because of how I'm saying how hard we're working to be able to afford all these measures. So we prioritize that because, as I mentioned, we knew from the very beginning that we wanted to do an ASL interpreted performance. We're only one of 3 shows this year that is doing an ASL interpreted performance. Yeah. So, working hard to have that be available to people. So I think that was our priority, was the interpreted show. And then knowing that in order to be able to make that happen, pay what you can wouldn't be an option for us for this for this run. Just to be able to pay off our team and things. But I think just we went in knowing that our priority was making that happen and how hard that was going to be. So I think there's many other shows that will have the pay what you can, and hopefully one day we will be able to do that. But for this time, no.
for this time. No, that's all right. I mean, hell, I mean, hopefully you can fundraise the crap out of this, and next run it'll grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can have, I mean, maybe even possibly more ASL interpreted performances. Who knows? So I'm curious about the context of your show, and why mother-daughter relationships. Why are apologies so important and powerful? Talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, the story started 2 years ago, and it was always really around the mother-daughter relationship, and then it grew from there. But yeah, first it was snakes that are often used as a symbol of evil and bad. And I was exploring the question of, like, can humans change, and what does it take for us to forgive someone when they've done something very, very bad? And so, yeah, obviously around the mother-daughter relationship, that is a relationship very important, very, very special, but is not always easy, which is what this show showcases, is just a very difficult relationship that is an important one, and there is still a lot of love, but just how do you navigate that when you're both so different? And why then that brings in the apology and shedding your old self, or shedding these evil ways of, like, can people change? What does it take for us to believe or trust in them again? And again, as I mentioned, starting these conversations early with a younger audience, because I know that as a kid I would make mistakes, and sometimes I felt that it was the end of the world, and it's not, especially when you're a kid and you have so much life to live, and you're gonna change and grow older. So yeah.
Very cool. And why to you is it important to program theater for youth?
Because they're the future. They're the future of not just Canadian theater, but our country, the world in general. And even with our accessibility measures, being able to program that for youth and showing them that that's possible, maybe even introducing it to some for the first time, that's a big deal. I know that at 9, 10, 11 years old, I didn't know about ASL interpreted performances, and I would have loved to know about that. And just, having hope that introducing them to that at such a young age will allow for more accessible theater, more inclusive theater down the line. And not just, and as I mentioned, not just theater, but even in whatever field they go into, just being aware of that, and all these other communities and needs that we all have.
Very cool. I love that you're introducing them into so many different possibilities. I think that's really, really wonderful. I mean, I guess fingers crossed we're introducing them to so many possibilities. And that's always the hope, eh? And now, I haven't even asked you my main question, which is, what is Canadian theater, and how does this show tie into the Canadian theater canon?
Whoa. Canadian theater. Oh my God. What is it? Wow. I feel like Canadian theater, I think we're starting to find our own identity, I think that we're starting to really, accept sort of, like the diaspora of what Canada is, and, like, all these different stories and how we all kind of intertwine together. I think that now I'm starting to see more of that, of, like, this version of Canadian theater where it's us accepting that we come from many different places, and there's all these histories, but that's what makes Canada unique, I hope. And then how does Snacey tie into that? I think what I will say is, like, Snacey ties into it in the sense that Snacey's exploring identity. And I think that Canadian theater in Canada is still exploring our identity. Like, we still are trying to find what is specifically Canadian.
That absolutely makes sense.
Yeah? Okay.
I totally. You're panicking. No need to panic. I'm curious how, in terms of exploring identity, how is this made maybe more accessible through exploring it through animals within the context of your show?
I love that question. That's true. I think for me, when I was writing it, mainly because of inherent sort of like metaphors that come with these animals, like I mentioned with snakes and evil, or even like with rabbits and how they're, you know, they're always doing something, they're very fast. So it started off like that, and I think that when there's this sort of like obvious character about them, like obvious traits that we will know, like if it's a rabbit and it's a snake and there's these things that we know, how do we dive deeper into who they actually are? Like, to me, that kind of makes sense of like there's already a stereotype that we're associating with these animals, and so a show that's talking about identity is breaking past those stereotypes or adding to it. We'll see. But yeah, I hope that made sense.
It totally did. And now, if you, just for fun, if you could relate to any animal out there, what would your animal relation be?
I mean, is it too obvious to say snake? I relate to a snake. I love a snake. That's my next tattoo, actually. I have a dragon here, but that's my next one. It would be a snake. Because of how they're always shedding, because of how people see them, like how they're perceived, and how some people love them, some people don't, you know, many different things. But yeah, snake.
A snake. I love it. Now, is there anything else you'd like to share with our little camera audience before we get things moving?
I'm going to say it's an incredible cast that is working so hard. I am truly in awe. Every rehearsal, I feel like they just take what's on the page and take it to a whole new level. They've made it 10 times better than when I first wrote it. And so really, if it's not for the animals, if it's not for the snake itself, Snacey, just go for the actors and the performers and their hard work, truly. And the designers that have created this amazing world, just, it's beautiful to look at. So yeah, for the team, love them all. Yeah.
Love it. Oh, and quickly, I did want to ask about, you've got that lovely animation. How did you come about that? And talk to me about the creation of that.
Oh my goodness, yes. An animation by the incredibly talented Ava Ireland. Yeah, that all started, again, 2 years ago. And so when it was very much TYA, I was thinking, with my producer hat on at the time, you know, how can I make this specific TYA stand out? And I thought, I don't know, like Snacey has to be animated, especially because it wasn't a human playing a snake, and I wanted people to know that, you know, the character's a snake. And so, yeah, I reached out to Ava because I loved her drawings from what I had seen. And then I thought, okay. And then also I hadn't seen an animated promo for these shows, so just asked and she was down to do it. And then this time around, I wanted to kind of stay true to the first iteration and, you know, yeah, sprinkle in some of those animations again this year. So yeah, we got some of that, but this time with all the other characters, which is cute.
It was very sweet, and it's so cool to see, I mean, marketing that isn't AI, and it's truly like a wonderful creator behind the scenes. Yes. So I was very excited to see that from you folks as well. And you guys are also, you've got a stage meet pitch, is that true?
Yes, this Saturday. The event is from 2 to 4. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the skating court.
Yeah, I think
yes.
We'll link it for you.
Thank you. I don't know it off the top of my head. It's my first time there, but I'm so excited. My talented cast is going to perform one of the songs in the show, so I'm very excited for people to hear that. Yeah, this Saturday, June 27th.
That's correct.
Yeah.
There we go. Wonderful. And if you want to catch the full version of Snacey, you're at the Weyni Mengesha Theatre, which is at Soulpepper. So very exciting. And you're July 3rd to 12th, correct?
Yes.
Gorgeous. So be sure to check out Snacey. I've had so much fun chatting with you. Your snake necklace, you're very on theme.
I mean, I love snakes.
We love snakes too. Yay. I'd love to see it. Thank you so much once again. This is Daphne St. Clair Ferguson signing off.